Button, baby. The greatest country, back-to-back world champs. If you ever doubted it, what says the GOAT of countries more than a tech mogul who steals your data, would suck your soul from your spinal cord, waving the American flag on technology that 99% of the rest of the world can never even afford? We can barely get a glimpse of such technology unless it was another soul-sucking technology like Twitter. God bless America. Happy 4th of July. We are back. Was that aggressive?
That's an intro right there. Good morning. How are we doing?
Lovely.
Happy 4th.
Lovely.
Happy Independence Day. It's lovely to be here.
Baby. You know what?
Woo.
After we beat the Brits, you know what we didn't do? We didn't take days off. We just started dominating everybody else. Good to be here. It is good to be here. Are we? Did I lose you? Oh, there you are. Oh. Are you there?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I'm here.
You just went dark.
I was waiting for you.
I'm ready. Oh, we got a call already. This might be, I don't know if it's a phone call or not, but we're going to take it.
Let's go.
Hello.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Are you going to patch me through to your morning show?
You're on.
You're live.
Oh, good. We're set. Good morning, gentlemen. Happy 4th of July.
Happy 4th of July to you.
Weekend.
What's going on this morning?
So what's our topic of discussion today?
Well, we were talking about your favorite person, Mark Zuckerberg, just a second. And now we're about to get into, I think, OPEC, Jeff Bezos stepping down, a little China cybersecurity. What you following this morning?
Well, I just missed you guys, and I'm just glad to know that you guys are actually working on a federal holiday. So
Listen, there's nothing more libertarian than working on a federal holiday. Like that's that's exactly where we get our pleasure from.
So I just wanted to say good morning to you too, and I look forward to listening in. But I thought I would just say, Ray, good morning. Ben, I hope that you really roast them today.
Well, that's a tall task. It's a tall task to ask such a man. Any man.
Well, I look forward to listening in. Happy 4th of July weekend, gentlemen.
Yeah, you too, bud. Thank you.
Free your breath. Thanks. Oh, boy. So, any response to that, by the way?
Kevin Smith says do something. I thought we were doing all kinds of stuff. Were you muted? Like, did it not come through? I mean, you come out spitting fire. I'm sorry, Kevin. I thought we come out spitting fire on the 4th of July Monday.
Yeah, if you missed the intro, there was a lull there in the middle there for a second. But all right, Ryan. So what are we talking about today? I know that before we hopped on, we were talking a little bit about OPEC, Saudi Arabia, UAE. Where are you on that? What's going on in that world?
Well, I mean, depending on what happens, the prices could go a lot of different directions. I saw a great tweet this morning that kind of summarized it. You have I'll send this to you if you can pull it up, maybe. I just thought about this. But anyways, it's bullish, bearish, and apish. Have you seen that chart before?
Yeah, I have actually. But tell me about it.
Anyway, so bullish, obviously no, bearish, obviously no. Apish has a big picture of a big silverback gorilla, and it's just going like straight over the top. And so, it depends on what happens here because there's a lot of pressure from the UAE, and they're not very happy. And if you've kind of followed what they've been doing, OPEC in general, obviously some of them have been cheating on their quotas. Some of them are wanting to keep the UAE mainly is wanting certain things versus the Saudis. I don't know if it will be resolved today. I think that's kind of the goal. I haven't seen where they're at this morning. I'm sorry, I get on Twitter and Alex Jones is Twitter trending. You have to see what's going on here. Oh no, sorry. Anyways,
can we see that?
Alex Jones is offering a scientific explain. Okay, no, he's being Alex Jones. So, Joe Biden. Yeah, I don't know. I'm sorry. It just anytime you see that, it's must see TV. Normally, it doesn't appear to be this time. So yeah, I don't know. OPEC we meet again. I do wonder after. Yes, there we go. After last year, when you had the Saudi Russian price war, the demand destruction as a result of the COVID-19, do you think that these OPEC members will continue to be able to meet? I thought the monthly meetings have been fantastic. It's been a very strong point, but now you see this point of contention, and I don't know. It feels like they have the corner of the market right now. The monthly meeting is really putting a lot of pressure on the U.S. producers. Well, I'd be a little hesitant if I were them to throw a monkey wrench into the system.
I mean, that's what I was going to say about the U.S. involvement. I mean, something that you and I talked about earlier in the year is that as a fallout from the domestic U.S. policy, that sort of unseats the U.S. on a global scale as well, from not only a power perspective but also just a pure moving of the commodity perspective. And so I think you're sort of seeing the other powers, the OPEC powers, begin to take that seat, begin to take that power, begin to take that that output. And if that trend continues, that that has power dynamic shift ramifications on a larger scale than just sort of commodity price and commodity liquidity, for lack of better phraseology. And so I think that we're sort of seeing what it looks like for the U.S. to voluntarily give up power on the energy structure, on the global scale. Because, I mean, even if you look at, Ryan, even if you look at like the Norways of the world, they are the most aggressive when they talk about green policy. But do you know who just announced a major discovery offshore? The major Norwegian oil producer. And so, when you look at these things, apples to apples, we're doing a lot of talk, and now the administration is doing some action, and it sort of leaves you the question as to why.
Can we talk about this for half a second? Did you see the video of the Gulf on fire, the portal to hell over the weekend?
I did.
Okay. And did you see all of the crazy folks talking about corporate greed?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Outside of America, how many oil and gas companies are owned by the government? Almost all of them. Oh yeah, all if not almost all, right? Like the overwhelming majority.
Yes, sir.
This was a Pemex pipeline, which is owned by the government. The Norwegian company you just mentioned is owned by the government. This is something that the oil and gas industry has to message better, is that not only separate the climate change stuff for a second, but that governments are behind so much oil and gas development across the world. Government is, because they own all of these companies.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have let the paradigm be focused on corporate greed or corporations, when you have governments who own huge oil and gas companies all over the world that are making discoveries. And God bless them, I'm not mad at them. I'm saying that, but this corporate greed in oil and gas is a little bit of a misnomer. There's plenty of corporate greed in oil and gas. I'm not saying that, but that it's only the reason that Pemex sucks so bad is that it's a state-run oil company.
Right. Okay? Thank you. Yes. That's what I was waiting for you to get, and that's exactly right. I mean, this fallacy that these oil companies are well run outside of the U.S. I mean, and again, going back to, so you look at the Northeast. The Northeast United States has decided that they're going to restrict the access to natural gas through pipeline to new infrastructure, et cetera. We've talked about this on the podcast, okay? What that means actually, and getting to the end here, what that means at the end of the day is importing that nat gas from China, Russia, and Venezuela and other places, depending on the legal and political climate. And so what that means is now you're co-signing the customers in the Northeast to the Russian or Chinese or what have you procedures to extract that resource, as opposed to in the U.S., where we have, I think, inarguably the most efficient, most effective, best practices in the upstream business globally, but we're being handcuffed in this country to the detriment of wages, to the detriment of resource, to the detriment of governmental power, in deference of some sort of loose ESG virtue signaling. I mean, is that fair, or am
I
I?
agree with all of that, and it just goes. So agreed, and I would add one more layer, which is we have to quit letting the discussion in the U.S. be that it's that oil and gas is a corporate issue. It is a political issue. So all of these governments around the world, if they want to stop drilling, they own the companies. They can stop it tomorrow.
Right.
And guess what? They steal from their people because they own the minerals as well. So this is, if you want to talk about stopping, and you shouldn't, it's terrible to be a crime against humanity. But when we hear the G12, the G10, the G20, whatever, talk about oil and gas production or carbon emissions, they own the companies. Not in the U.S., but everyone own the companies. Just stop. No one's making you do it. Just stop it. You own the minerals. Real quick, you own the minerals too. You ought to sell them. So, but they don't. And so then when this pipeline happens, it's like corporate greed. Listen, we're going to talk about Amazon in a minute. Corporations are greedy. I get it. That's a problem. But it's not all the problems. There's plenty of government problems too. But no one ever goes, well, it's we got to quit doing stuff through the government. And they're like, no, we need more government to fix it.
Absolutely. So two things. Number one, you made a great point. When in the history of the world has the government or the power ever exploited a resource to the benefit of the populace? I mean, that's just not the model. I mean, the king brings the gold into the kingdom. The oil company, the government brings the oil and into the coffers for the government. And so I think that trust is obviously misaligned. And then I was going to make another point, and I totally lost it. That happens.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I would say for folks who want to do a little bit more digging, read The World for Sale by Javier Blaz and Jack Farsi. They talk about how you have a private entity who's trying to sell oil, and all the comings and goings, and how that actually happens. There's plenty of government responsibility here. It doesn't matter who's in power; it's just a different name, right, left, whatever. That's not an issue. It's just that this is what happens.
So it looks like we're hovering around $75 oil right now. You had, and I'm blanking on had a guest on last week that threw out some $150, $200 barrel. Dave Blackman, thank you. I don't think, and I know we mentioned it, I don't think we talked about it. What are you expecting here in the next 6, 12, 18 months on price movement, highs or lows?
Yeah, so David predicts by 150 by 2023, 2024, and his thesis is based upon the fact that we haven't invested enough to find new oil in the future. So here's how I think about that generally, and I've been on the record for this for quite some time. That is quite possible. The other thing that's possible is, and I'm not a geologist or I'm an expert in anything, so this is just me talking. I suspect when properly motivated, we could find oil pretty fast, right? So if tomorrow we legitimately thought we were going to run out of oil, we would start scouring the earth for it, and we'd probably find a bunch more. So I see what David's saying. And I do think it is a potential problem. However, I'm not entirely convinced that it will work out that way, because as we move forward, Africa, as a sub-Saharan Africa, they are very interested in oil and gas production. So go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I mean to interrupt you, but that's actually the other point I was going to make. I think it's an interesting conversation to be had when, simultaneous to the conversation of restricting the global access to oil, you also have burgeoning places like sub-Saharan Africa and India that are economies that are growing at an exponential rate, and to tell those economies, oh, and by the way, you need to grow, but with no carbon footprint for the first time in in human history ever, and just deal with that. I mean, you're talking about. What you're talking about is life and death, right? This is not sort of some. This isn't an easy conversation to have when you're talking about those billions of people that need access to cheap, reliable power, and but can't have it because of
reasons.
Thank you.
Libertarians. We'll blame libertarians. The real libertarians, we'll blame them. But I mean, that's a pretty good shot at libertarians and why they can't win elections. So if you want to go listen to that.
Oh, okay. In that case, I like it.
Yeah, sold. He's not wrong. A shot.
Why didn't you cut that and put it on LinkedIn?
Well, I can't give out the goods. You know, you gotta bury the lead sometimes to get people tuned in. So, okay, let's talk a little bit about Jeff Bezos real quick. Let's move the needle here. He's stepped down. I guess it's today or tomorrow or yesterday or whatever. What are your thoughts on this? Because it's today. Okay, new CEO, new person at the top. I don't know if it's a man or a woman who's replaced him. I haven't really paid much attention. Amazon keeps on trucking because the system is so it's such a well-oiled machine. Or if you were a shareholder, a significant shareholder, would you be concerned about this?
No, I think that Jeff Bezos is, or I should say was, sort of like the Steve Jobs of Apple, where Steve Jobs was the visionary there. And I think there was some concern that in the handoff there that, there'd be sort of a change in trajectory. I think that the Google machine the Amazon machine is large enough and sort of a self-sustaining engine of itself. I think that this is just kind of, he's moving on to the next phase. What after looks like 27 years at the helm. I think that when I look at this, the first thought I had was, given what's being talked about in terms of capital gains and other tax bracket changes here, quickly, this may just be sort of a structural, and doesn't really change the day to day, because I don't really know what his day to day at current is, but I don't imagine it's sitting at the desk 60 hours a week. Maybe it is.
Can we talk about the taxes real quick?
Sure.
He's in the space business, right?
So it's funny it's funny you say that so briefly. What I was going to mention, by the way, is are we setting up for like a DB Cooper kind of thing? But
I was going the other direction, but that's pretty good. That's pretty good. I mean, one of the frustrations, and I don't know enough about the space business for obvious reasons, but I suspect the tax implications of being in the space business are pretty lucrative. Far more lucrative than it is to actually go to space.
Yes. I think that probably.
I know that's to be true. Unless you're launching a satellite, that'd be different. I'm talking about taking people to space. There's no money in taking people to space. Okay, there's no money in that. There's not enough people who can afford, $100,000 $1 million trips to space. It's a very limited, very niche market. So there's no money in going to space. Launching rockets for satellite maybe is one thing, but there's no money in it. It has to be a huge tax write-off. So being that he's in the space business, I'm presuming that that's why he doesn't pay a lot of taxes as well, because he's getting tons of write-offs from that business on top of his other stuff.
So I didn't realize that today was actually the 27th anniversary. He started the company July 5th, 1994.
Oh, I didn't realize that either. I didn't realize that. But their moat is so wide. I think was what you're getting a minute ago. Their moat is so wide that you almost tend to think that it's hard to overcome. The only thing I would say, Ben, is that this is a logistics business. Apple is a product. I mean, they have logistics on some level, of course, but there's a product business. Make a good laptop that really works for a long period of time, and it's better than the garbage Windows puts out. Dell or whomever.
I mean, but Ryan, literally, he's leaving on that Blue Orchid flight, or Blue Origin flight on July 20th. This is only less than 3 weeks away.
Fire up the conspiracy music.
I'm just saying.
Fire up the conspiracy music.
For what it's worth, by the way, it's not as though he's riding in the sunset. I think he's staying on as it was executive chairman or executive co-chairman or something of that nature, which is still a pretty robust role. And so I think he's. Like I said, I think this is more sort of a structural change than anything of indicative of change within the organization. I don't know.
I don't know. I'm following. I'll say this again. The logistics business is very hard to run. You don't think that if the Prime starts to, your packages aren't coming on time. I don't know. He obviously isn't watching all the warehouses, but it does take a unique person to lead a company that is driven to get you your stuff very quickly over and over and over and over and over again. And maybe the wheels are greased enough, but I don't think it's the same as Apple. I know what you're saying. You might be right. I just wonder because of the nature of the business.
Is this all with the factor or just morning off the rails?
Why?
Well, it's important for what I'm going to say next.
It's whatever you want to be.
Okay, we're gonna go with this is Don't Let the Facts podcast prep. I have a question. Ryan. I have a question for you. So I know that you're looking to IPO that business out of Beijing, and so are you concerned about? Is that too much? No. So just kidding. I wasn't.
Get it right.
I don't what.
It's in Shanghai.
Okay, so I was trying to throw just like off the scent, but fair enough. So I'm curious. Recently there have been some actions from the Chinese government that have come after some of the Chinese companies that have decided to IPO on the New York Stock Exchange. This doesn't necessarily come as like breaking news or something shocking to me, but talk to me a little bit about that. What's the ramifications of that, or sort of what is the Chinese government saying by doing that? Is there or I'm curious because I don't know, is there a precedent for this, or is this just sort of SOP, or is this relatively new?
Yeah. What is China saying? Let's start with that. I don't know, because let me just tell you what should happen, in my opinion, because this will make it a lot more simple. Is Americans should be able to invest in whatever stock market they want, whatever stock exchange they want to. So the Johannesburg, Hong Kong, London, with ease. Get on Robinhood or some app, you should go do that. It's not easy to do that right now. In fact, I think for a lot of that, unless they've changed it, you have to have a broker dealer to help you with that, right?
Mm-hmm. I think you're
okay. Because we don't have that, and we want people to come to America, we let these foreign-owned companies come to America, which I'm not opposed to that in principle, except for the fact that they're subject to government influence, and sometimes they're owned by the government and they're publicly listed. Let's talk about insider trading another day, with the fact that you have government entities that are traded on the New York Stock Exchange. We'll say that for the Let the Facts episode. However, what? It's a fair point, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
I was enjoying it. I'm just enjoying it.
Yes. The other thing is and now special with Ryan. The other thing is that average Americans, retail investors, are probably not aware of all the intricacies of most of the corporations they invest in, whether it's Amazon or a Chinese company or a European company. It doesn't matter. But when you allow foreign-owned companies that are maybe owned by the government in part or some, or heavily influenced on our stock exchange, you then open up our retail investors to that. And they are not potentially aware of the danger that they're getting into. Now, the problem is I'm not for all the government bureaucracy and all this stuff, so I don't really like that. But I think the practical solution is let us invest in whatever stock exchange we want. The stock exchange hosts companies that are from that country. That seems to make the most sense right now, because you have these companies who are coming from China who have bad books. We talked about this on Inside the War Room with Tyler Johnson. That have bad books, and investors will lose a lot of money because they can't actually vet the companies, and then no one goes after them. And so, to me, that is an unfair practice that's being allowed to happen on the stock exchange. And so, there's a lot of potential ways to resolve it, but I think the easiest way is, if you're a U.S. company, you're on the U.S. exchange. If you're a Chinese company, the Chinese exchange, an African company, whatever exchange you want to be on there. So.
But how does that address, if you're a Chinese company, or maybe if you're an African company and you want access? And because I think that, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the reason that you IPO on the New York Stock Exchange is for direct access to American dollar liquidity. And if you're just on the African exchange, you don't have that. And arguably, even if to your point, it's just as easy, I think you'd still have some sort of bell curve in terms of adoption there that would sort of unbank some of that. Whereas if you IPO on the New York Stock Exchange, you're kind of mitigating that. Do you agree with that, or am I sort of off there?
Okay, no, I think you're probably right, and I also think, if we're being completely honest here, the reason it's set up this way is because the U.S. as the reserve currency wants as many companies coming to the U.S. dependent on their dollar as humanly possible, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's a lot of reasons the system is set up the way that it is. To your point, I agree 100%. And to the reserve currency standpoint as well. But the other thing is, so let's say that you're a South African company and you're on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, I believe, and you're on that exchange. there shouldn't be any real reason why a U.S. bank can't IPO you down there. But to your point, you go to America, you get the big treatment, you get the big special, whatever you want to call it, and things look better, they feel better, and it's good for America. I'm not trying to say it's bad for America. What I'm saying is when you actually look at this, and the fact that you can have government-owned entities on the stock exchange, and then Americans are prosecuted for insider trading, that is an abomination. It's a crime against humanity. The second thing is that these companies could be fraudulent listed on our stock exchange. They go away with no repercussion. Oh, by the way, if you're one of our CEOs and you are fraudulent, which you should be prosecuted and punished, then you're getting the hammer laid on you. That's just not fair that you're actually punishing your own citizens for crimes that you're not punishing other people. And it's the same crime. Either it's a crime or it's not. And so to me, it opens up all these doors that we don't have a good way to resolve right now. So I think the best step would be to localize the IPOs. But I'm open to other ideas, but I don't know how you fix this problem with the government influence on these companies in the U.S. stock exchange. What are you going to threaten them with? You know what I'm saying?
Answer that.
Yeah. So am I. I'm happy to hear them. I'm not aware of any.
No, that's fair. I mean, so we've talked about before. I think you and I have a different take on China's, what I guess I would call, desire to accrete global power as opposed to, continuing to accrete more regional power within their borders. I mean, are you still on the same, not train, but I mean, are you still as convinced that China's motives here are sort of more grandiose than just trying to? I mean, I guess I still struggle with that. I mean, are you? Yeah, I guess. Do you still think that China is trying to take power away from the U.S.? Where do you think that they sit in that? And then I guess the reason I'm asking the question is, how do you think that's changed now that Biden's in office? And kind of what do you think China is going to start to do or has started to do that was different over the last, I don't know, 2-4 years?
Yeah, I mean, I think China wants to be number one because who doesn't want to be number one, right? Only the bench player doesn't want to be number one. That's why he's the bench player. So I think they want to be number one. Now, what lengths they're willing to go to be number one is up for debate, and what that means to be number one. The other thing to think about with China is that they are, if you kind of use a wartime analogy, they're fighting battles on multiple fronts. They have to prevent people from getting inside their country, from getting too much power, while they're trying to gain power and influence outside the country. Well, the problem is that sometimes those things contradict each other, right? So you need supply chain companies to come to your country, factories, stuff like that. They're going to build and develop to help produce wealth in your country, right? But then you start having these moguls who get rich, they make a lot of money. It's like, well, we don't want you that rich, right? So then you have this kind of back and forth that you see with China, and so I don't know if all of their actions are necessarily to target the U.S. Hey, look at you, you're muted. I'm sure it's a good point though.
No, have you read this?
I have it on my list. I don't think I bought it yet though. No. You good?
I just opened it. I'm like 20 pages in. I was just curious because you were talking about some of the things that this book opens with. So I was just curious if you had, but never mind.
Most of the good ideas of books I get from me. So that's just a fact. Now the next China book I have is I'm getting ready to read this one. So we'll see. But anyways, so I don't, real quick, I say that I don't think sometimes if you're not careful, to Tim's point, it's a war on like 40 fronts. But yes, agreed. It's a war on multiple fronts. I think too many times the U.S. commentators on China try to pinpoint exactly what China's doing and how it pertains to the U.S. And I don't necessarily think that they always have the U.S. in mind when they're doing stuff. And sometimes they have the U.S. very much in mind. It just depends on what's going on. And it's hard to tell which is which.
I mean, I think you're right. I think you did it last week, and then you're sort of touching it on it now. That at the end of the day, if China can devalue or weaken the U.S. dollar, that the other sort of doesn't matter. I mean, it's not as though they're trying to start an actual war. This Cold War of just kind of attempting to weaken the U.S. dollar. That's the win here, right?
That would be the major win, absolutely.
So I know we're running up against time, and as the rusty co-host that you are, you didn't plug the YouTube channel on the front end of the show, so I'm going to let you try it again. Why don't you sign us off here and tell people where they can find us, and let's get this thing off there.
You've listened to another Quality Morning with Ryan Ray and Ben Samuels on the War Room Media YouTube channel, which you can find this replay and other fine products. Ryan and Ben will be back Wednesday, 8:30. That's right. It's a twice-a-week show now, moving forward. You can also guest Ben Samuels today as a guest host on the Texas One Guest podcast on the War Room Media YouTube channel. Also, you can catch Ben Samuels 1 o'clock Central Time, Thursday, for Coffee and Liquidity with guest, I don't know, the cat. And then also Thursday at 3 Central Time, Ben Samuels and Ryan Ray return for their much critically acclaimed show, Don't Let the Facts. Until then, something. When the water rises, there's stuff there.
There's stuff there.
There is stuff there.